What is Citizens United? Few Supreme Court decisions have generated more controversy in modern American politics than Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. Some people believe it opened the floodgates for money in politics. Others argue it protected one of America's most important constitutional rights, freedom of speech. Supporters call it a victory for the First Amendment. Critics call it one of the most damaging Supreme Court decisions in modern history. But what exactly was Citizens United? What did the Supreme Court actually decide? And how did the decision change American elections? At its core, Citizens United asked a simple question: can the government restrict political spending by corporations and organizations? To understand the case, we need to go back to campaign finance laws that existed before 2010. For decades, Congress had attempted to limit the influence of money in elections. One of the most important laws was the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002, sometimes called McCain-Feingold. Among other things, it restricted certain political advertising funded by corporations and labor unions close to elections. Citizens United was a nonprofit political organization. In 2008, during the presidential election, the group produced a documentary critical of Senator Hillary Clinton. The film was titled Hillary, the Movie. Citizens United wanted to distribute and promote the documentary shortly before the Democratic primary elections. Federal regulators argued that doing so could violate campaign finance laws. Citizens United disagreed and filed a lawsuit. The case eventually reached the Supreme Court. The central constitutional question involved the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects freedom of speech. Citizens United argued that political speech does not lose constitutional protection simply because the speaker is a corporation or nonprofit organization. The government argued that restrictions were necessary to prevent corruption and undue influence in elections. The court now had to decide where the balance should be drawn. In January of 2010, the Supreme Court issued its decision. The court ruled 5-4 in favor of Citizens United. The majority concluded that the government generally cannot prohibit corporations, unions, and nonprofit organizations from spending money independently to advocate for or against political candidates. The court reasoned that political speech enjoys strong constitutional protection regardless of the speaker's identity. Importantly, the court did not rule that corporations could donate unlimited amounts directly to candidates. Direct contributions remain subject to restrictions. Instead, the ruling focused on independent expenditures. That distinction is critical. An independent expenditure occurs when an individual or organization spends money advocating for or against a candidate without coordinating directly with that candidate's campaign. For example, a group might purchase television advertisements supporting a candidate. A labor union might run ads criticizing a candidate. A nonprofit organization might produce political documentaries or online content. As long as these activities are conducted independently, they fall under the protections recognized by the court. One of the most significant consequences of Citizens United was the rise of super PACs. Super PAC stands for Independent Expenditure Only Political Action Committee. These organizations can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money from individuals, corporations, unions, and other groups. However, they are prohibited from coordinating directly with candidates. Since 2010, super PACs have become major players in federal elections. Supporters of Citizens United argue that the decision strengthened free speech protections. They contend that political speech is among the most important forms of expression protected by the Constitution. They also argue that government should not have the power to determine which speakers may participate in political debate. From this perspective, limiting independent political spending can amount to limiting political expression. Supporters often emphasize that the First Amendment protects speech, even when it is controversial or unpopular. Critics see the issue differently. They argue that Citizens United increased the influence of wealthy donors and powerful organizations. They worry that unlimited spending can drown out the voices of ordinary citizens. Critics also argue that political influence may increasingly reflect financial resources rather than public support. Many opponents contend that the decision weakened efforts to reduce corruption and improve public confidence in elections. One common misperception is that Citizens United created money in politics. In reality, money has influenced politics throughout American history. Wealthy individuals, political organizations, labor unions, businesses, newspapers, and advocacy groups have long sought to influence elections. Citizens United did not invent political spending. What it did was change the legal rules governing certain types of independent expenditures. Understanding this distinction is important when evaluating the case. More than a decade later, Citizens United remains one of the most debated Supreme Court decisions in modern history. Some Americans believe the decision strengthened constitutional freedoms. Others believe it gave too much influence to wealthy interests. Numerous proposals have been made to reform campaign finance laws, increase disclosure requirements, or even amend the Constitution. The debate continues because it involves two important democratic values: freedom of speech and concern about the influence of money in politics. Finding the right balance remains a challenge. Citizens United was not simply a dispute about campaign ads. It became a major constitutional debate about the meaning of free speech and the role of money in American politics. The Supreme Court ruled that independent political spending by corporations, unions, and nonprofit organizations enjoys significant First Amendment protections. Supporters viewed the decision as a victory for free expression. Critics viewed it as a setback for campaign finance reform. Regardless of where you stand, Citizens United continues to shape how American elections are funded and how political messages reach voters. And that's why understanding the case remains essential for understanding modern American politics. Where do you stand on Citizens United? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe above, and we'll see you next time.